Tonight's episode is Memories of Murder versus Okja. Today, our debaters will be defending a couple films by Oscar-winning South Korean director Bong Joon Ho. His work is often characterized by emphasis on social and class themes, genre mixing, dark comedy, and sudden tone shifts. This is OTR Debate, the podcast where three lawyers debate the nerdiest questions while bringing it back to the law. And as I said earlier, tonight we're debating Bong Joon Ho movies. For Memories of Murder, we have
Lando. I'm a prosecutor.
And for Okja,
Mucci. I'm an immigrant.
and I'm Wee. I'll be your judge today. Before we start the debate, let's check the procedural history to see how we got here. Andy, roll the tapes.
Should I ask him? Is now the time to ask? Fine, I'm just going to.
You like Bong Joon Ho?
What the f*** you just say to me?
Bong Joon Ho, the director. You like him?
The parasitic guy? Mickey Mouse 17?
Mickey 17. But anyway, I just saw Okja, and I think it's by far his best movie. Better than Parasite even.
Mucci, we just started this walk. Don't piss me off.
My mom even.
No. Speaking of mom, Memories of Murder is even better than Okja.
Yeah.
Parasite too.
That one of them, but
Where the f*** is we? Because we have to debate this right now because I'm going to freak the
Now that we know how we got to court, let's start. As always, the format for this debate is opening statements, a few questions from me, short recess, and then closing statements and my final verdict.
Okja is a 2017 Bong Joon Ho movie that was one of Netflix's first big original movies. In it, a young Korean girl, Mija, who lives with her grandfather, is given a genetically modified super pig by this major corporation as a pet, and then 10 years later, the super corporation has come to collect its pig and develop a new kind of meat out of it. So Mija goes on an adventure to rescue her pet, Okja, and runs into the goals of a animal rights group, the ALF, who want to use Okja to spy on the corporation and report on their mistreatment of animals. This came out a couple years before Bong's first big Academy Award win with Parasite, and it tells a story of corporate greed, mass consumption, animal rights, and the connection between people and their pets.
Memories of Murder follows lead detective Park, his best friend, who's also a detective, and an inspector from Seoul named Inspector Sao. They try to solve a series of brutal murders that occur in the farmlands of a small town. Now, this movie did not hit me like the double front kick that one of the inspectors does multiple times throughout this movie. No, it was more of a slow burn that the more I watched, the more compelling it got, and the more I wanted to help these detectives solve these fucking murders. I mean, they just couldn't get it right time and time again. It was a movie where the characters are flawed, the backdrop is dreary, and the suspect could be anyone, even you.
Hit that subscribe button and make sure that you get updated regularly on when we release episodes.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So my first question is about the themes and allegories and, deep emotions maybe that are explored in your film. Can you guys both speak to that?
Yeah, I can start off, Mooch. Sure. I have a couple different points. I have 3 different points, so maybe if you want to just break up mine, because I'm not sure how much you have. But the first thing I would want to kind of throw out there is in this film, it's kind of a theme throughout, and it's kind of thrown out there and not as overt as other things that is very apparent in the movie, but there's a constant theme of masculinity and what it means and what certain characters think it is. One of the detectives, the lead detective, Detective Park, he is this guy that's just very I'm this macho guy. I think, I'm like this detective that I see on TV. He's trying to be this awesome detective that can look into the eyes of an accused person and know whether or not he did it, which throughout the film, he's proven time and time again, dead wrong. And he looks into their eyes. He thinks he knows, but it's far from the truth. He's also shown with he has some ED problems, and so that kind of that's something that is shown. He's also
How was it shown?
well, I mean, it's literally like he's having problems having sex, which is that what you want to tell me?
Showing by not showing.
Yeah, showing by not showing, pretty much. It also shows another side of him where he has this exterior to the outside world, but when he's with his girlfriend or whatever, he's very vulnerable. And every shot with her, he's in a very vulnerable state. But on the outside, when he's with other detectives and stuff, he's like chain smoking, kind of talking like he knows everything. So that's just something that reoccurs throughout the film. Mucci, the other ones are longer, so if you want to jump in with yours.
I was trying to work in a reference to the Chance the Rapper song Chainsmoker, but I couldn't pull the lyrics quick enough. I think one of the first points of mine is the immorality of mass consumption of animals. One theme that's explored is the idea of carnism, which is like eating animals is not a necessity, but an ideology, because we decide which animals are okay to eat and which ones are not. For example, pigs are as intelligent as dogs, but we decide they're okay to eat and dogs aren't.
I think they're actually more intelligent.
Yeah, as intelligent, if not more so, I think is like kind of the position on that. So, yeah, but we kind of go, oh yeah, it's okay to eat pigs, not okay to eat dogs. But so choosing to eat meat and which meats to eat is an act of ideology, because we have decided yes, no, moral or immoral on that issue.
It's The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan.
Oh, okay. I don't know what that is.
It's a book.
Michael Pollan?
I don't know if it's Poland or Pollan.
Oh.
You could look it up after the recording.
So in this movie, Okja is given to one young Korean girl and her grandfather by this big corporation that developed these super pigs, but in the current day of the film, the corporations come back to take back Okja to be slaughtered for food, for mass consumption. So Bong Joon Ho actually visited slaughterhouses in developing the film, and said that in the film he wasn't even able to capture a fraction of the horror that he saw there. He became vegan for a time after visiting those and developing the film, but found it very hard to do in Korea, where, as he says, quote, every street on every corner is burning meat. So it made him become vegan for a time, but he bounced back.
But the smell of the meat got to him. The burning of the meat, he's like, man, that smells good.
I can relate, right?
Yeah, very relatable for sure.
So my next 2 points on this are he explores South Korea as a whole in terms of the setting, the backdrop, the time frame of the movie. So this was his second movie that he directed, and it was released in 2003. However, it was set in the 80s when, it's kind of spoiler to my answering my third question, to the legal question, but it is based off of like their most famous serial killings in South Korea. So it's got massive basis in real life. When talking on the making of documentary, he states that I wanted to address the limitations of our nation and society through the film by portraying the tragic losses of the inspectors who worked on the case. And this is shown throughout the movie. There's a scene where one of the detectives loses his leg because he's not able to get it properly treated, be that his own masculinity and his own issues with wanting to get treatment or access to treatment. There's another scene where the detectives are like demanding assistance from other departments because their department is really small, and they're basically like yelling like, we need help, like there's going to be a murder that's going to happen tonight right now because of these things that we've established are true. There's going to be a fucking murder, and they're not able to get the assistance they need because the manpower is being used to suppress a student protest somewhere not there. The movie is said to be somewhat inspired and kind of thought up after he was gifted a graphic novel called From Hell, which is a story. I mean, Mucci, do you know it?
I have read only a little bit of it, but I know of it, yeah.
Okay. say
Like about Jack the Ripper mainly, right?
correct. So in there, it explores societal aspects of London around that time. So that, that paired up with South Korea's own issues around the time of the serial killings led him to this. It also, in tying with that, deals with a lot of the just political oppression that was happening at the time. The majority of the movie takes place in the late 80s, and showcases life in that kind of setting. The whole movie's, and I'll get into this in your second question, because I already know what you're going to ask, but the whole movie's shown just kind of in a dreary state. Bong Joon Ho, he said that it was kind of hard finding film locations because everything since the authoritarian government was kind of ousted out and they regained democracy or gained democracy. Stuff started kind of getting better and looking better. So they stuck to kind of farmlands and, sort of areas that look kind of fit the scene. But as we all know, President Chun Doo-han successfully orchestrated the second coup in that country back in the 80s, right? So very different and very dissimilar to MAGA because, January 6th wasn't very successful. So this was the second coup that was successful in that country. And that president at the time was a fan of silencing anyone that didn't agree with him to retain his power and engaged in corrupt acts because he was suppressing them. So I'm sure he was calling for firing of journalists who disagreed with him. I'm sure he was threatening to provide no aid to places that were disagreeing with him. I'm sure he was threatening to provide no aid to colleges, organizations, and such that were disagreeing with him. I'm sure he surrounded himself with loyalists who agreed with whatever he said. I'm sure his rule was filled with self-enrichment and detriment to the South Korean people, and that's why they eventually gained democracy in the 90s. But that
was the government efficient, though?
Well, see, that's the thing. I'm sure in their minds they thought it was. It all boiled down and led up to, I'm sure it was not the last thing, but it led down to a military crackdown that ended up with 200 people being killed in one of these protests. So that's all stuff that kind of plays in the background, not overtly stated, not thrown in your face, but it's something that you're kind of aware, if you know or look into, kind of what South Korean history was, and then people watching the movie in South Korea or around that area would absolutely know what was going on. It was kind of something like you get why their lifestyle and the backgrounds like that. So it kind of just is in the shadows of the movie pretty much.
Got it.
One of the other themes that I wanted to touch on is kind of only shown in one real exchange, but there's these people called the ALF, they're Animal Liberation Front, that are trying to take Okja for their own purposes to spy on the corporation. They're going to install surveillance into Okja to report back to them the abuses so they can publish them. But Mija is only really able to communicate with one of them, Stephen Yeun's character, since he speaks Korean. So he ends up misrepresenting what she agrees to and tells the ALF that she agrees to let them use Okja, and she didn't say that. So he lies to her, he lies to the rest of the ALF, and as he leaves, there is a subtle joke in the subtitles. So the subtitles have him say, "Mija, try learning English. It opens new doors." But in Korean, he actually just says, "Mija, also my name is Kusun Bom."
Okay.
So it's intentionally mistranslated in that moment to kind of make a joke about language barriers and the kind of the supremacy of English in some ways. So it's kind of clever.
So this takes place in Korea?
Yeah. For the beginning part of the movie, where do they transport Okja to? I think it's in I think it's in the U.S. Eventually, heading toward New York. I think I can't quite remember, but Yeah.
Wonder what kind of tariffs they had back then.
On pigs? At least 25%.
On super pigs?
You take out another 5% on that.
All right, thanks for answering my first question so thoroughly. Now we're going to take a brief recess.
It's been really long. Okay.
Thorough, you know. But we're going to take a brief recess right now to play one of our many mini games. Today we'll be playing No Caps in Court, in which I will read a statement and the debaters will have to guess if they're true or false. And these statements will be somewhat related to their films. All right, who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Yeah,
Okay.
you could go.
All right. This first question for Mucci.
Let's get this shit over with.
According to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization,
Well,
pork,
these are going to be hard.
pork is the second most widely eaten meat in the world, making up 36% of the world's meat after poultry.
Okay. Oh.
True or false?
Pork second most for poultry. False.
You're right. It is false. It
Yeah.
is the most widely eaten meat.
Okay, I didn't know which way it would go. I didn't know if it would be pork is lower down the list.
I was going to
or
say
that, like beef was second or something like that. I didn't. Okay.
Beef is third, actually.
I was going to say it was lower on the list too, because there's, I mean, obviously like religious aspects like play into it too. And like, okay.
Yeah, I would have
Interesting.
thought poultry was the most. But
Yeah.
Yeah. Poultry is second. But
I knew there was a trick.
36% is accurate, but that is the most widely eaten meat.
Okay.
You forget, I know there are a lot of Muslim and Jewish, population around the world, but
Yeah.
Americans love bacon. I love bacon. Until I see Okja, though. I might change my mind. All right. Lando, your first question is, you mentioned the Hwasong murders back in the 80s. So for a period between September 15th, 1986 and April 3rd, 1991, the actual case that this movie was inspired by, the serial killer back then terrorized and killed 8 women.
It's false. I think it's 9.
It's 10.
10. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe. So I think in the movie, 9 were like depicted. They were basically the same as
Oh, okay.
as the real.
I see.
Yeah. So maybe that's why I got stuck.
Got it.
I could also be wrong about that too. So
All right, Mucci. In 2024,
I still got the point, Mucci. So
yeah, you're both 1 and 1.
It's funny that it's like 8 notes. 2 more than that, if you can believe it.
Well, I wasn't sure if I should go higher and then be like, well, it's only 10. So I went with lower. But,
2 were killed. No, 10.
all right. In 2024, South Koreans consumed an average of 30 kilograms, or 66 pounds, of pork per person, a 6.8% increase from the 5-year average of 28.1 kilograms.
You're gonna say that's true.
Too detailed? Yeah.
Well, either that or it was gonna be one thing was off, slightly off. Like no, it was 30 kilograms or whatever.
Well, you're right. So it's 2-1.
2-1. Okay. Were there 3 questions per person?
Just 2.
Just 2? Okay.
So
Shit. So I have
this
to
is a
get
make or
this to
break.
tie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So the aforementioned serial killer who committed these crimes back in the 80s and 90s has been in prison since 1994 because he was convicted of these murders.
The actual one?
Yeah.
That is false.
Okay. So now it's tied. So yeah, he has been in prison since 1994, but he's serving a life sentence for the rape and murder of his sister-in-law in that year.
You're taking my third question's answer.
Oh wow.
But yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So he knew.
Yeah.
Just shut up. Just kidding. Just go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know how to do a tiebreaker, but I guess you guys know
Rock,
your...
paper, scissors.
Sure.
We have to say it into the mic though.
Oh yeah, that's true.
All right.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Oh.
Well, you got to do shoot.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
And for those who are listening only, Mucci did rock and Lando did scissors.
Scissors
I
the
did it
first
twice.
time. Yeah.
So the winner of this minigame is Mucci, and that concludes our recess. So we're moving to our second question. All right, so my second question is, can you please tell me some aspects of the film itself, like cinematography, music, CGI, that you really enjoyed or that makes your film stand out from the rest?
Yeah, Mucci, you have a CGI'd pig?
I do.
Okay.
So that would be, I think, the main aspect of this film that differs from some of the others.
The pig doesn't talk, right? It's not like Babe or anything, right?
No, it's not like Babe.
Okay.
Although Babe, I guess Babe talks to the other animals. He doesn't doesn't talk to like the humans actually. That'll do, pig. It's not. You spoke English, great.
But he understood the humans, right?
Like an animal would, I think.
That
is
line
mostly,
was to him.
Yeah.
He didn't say that to someone else.
No, the line's to him. Yeah.
He said it in the mirror to himself.
That'll do, pig.
So the main draw is this CGI giant super pig. As Bong said, he said, this is a digital creature, but we also made it in real life. On set, we called them stuffies. And so we called them. And he said we made them since the actors need to interact with it. So, and you see it behind the scenes video of various practical parts of Okja, like a practical model of them made of foam, running along with the actors in these various scenes, or Mija is writing it or whatever, rather than just a guy with, balls all over him.
Like in Twilight.
Yeah, in a manner of speaking.
Have you guys seen it like in Marvel? I think it was like the last Avengers one, where they had Thanos and he was like a big, huge Thanos head on top of someone.
It's not like
someone
that,
else,
yeah.
and so it's like Thor can interact with Chris Hemsworth, can interact with Thanos, who's supposed to be much bigger. It looks so goofy.
Yeah, it looks goofy, obviously, in this as well because it's not real, but it's still, I think it helps the actors, especially a young actor like the one that plays the little girl, to see. Physically see something at least, or, interact with something. So yeah, that's how that was developed. And obviously just, fully CG creature, but with like these, ways to make the film, and the actors interact with a real thing that's not just CG just plopped in there. But Bong developed the script with a Welsh author named John Ronson, and he developed the English-speaking characters because this is, I don't think, it's not Bong's first video to feature English-speaking characters. Snowpiercer came before this one, I believe. It definitely came before this one. But he went to an English-speaking author to do the English-speaking characters. And Ronson is this screenwriter and author who is best known for his book, The Men Who Stare at Goats, which is a 2004 book about the U.S. military's interest in the paranormal.
Clooney.
Yeah, and made into a movie later. And then also, Okja was the first ever Netflix movie to screen at the Cannes Film Festival, however you pronounce it. But now Netflix makes all these films. This year, Emilia Perez screened at the Cannes Film Festival famously as well, and was nominated for Best Picture. But I think this was the first of Netflix's prestigious run at making actual films.
Got it.
I think they got a little better and then got significantly worse over time, is what I'm understanding.
I mean, hey, they win awards.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
It's up to the critics, I guess,
Yeah.
not to the audience.
Never.
This is something I've been fighting my whole life.
You got to protest sometimes.
Only when it's Kids' Choice Awards,
So Mom has very toned down colors in Memories of Murder, not actual Mother.
Another Bong Joon Ho movie.
Yeah. You got what I was throwing down.
And
You
also a
picked it
Darren
up.
Aronofsky movie.
Correct. So toned down
Exclamation
colors. Everything's kind of dreary for most of the film. It's mostly set in the 80s. The very end of the film is brighter. I think the first scene is actually brighter. The last scenes are brighter. And there's only certain colors that actually stand out throughout. At one point, towards the beginning of the investigation, the color red is very prominent because it was something that they thought had to do with like a trend that the serial killer was, targeting these women that were wearing red. So that it very much stands out whenever there's a woman wearing red throughout the beginning of the movie, at least. But Bong and his cinematographer went with this style to show the somberness, obviously, but they use this process called bleach bypass, which I guess is a process where the final image is desaturated and it gets this kind of tone. And so only the opening and the ending scenes were done normally, and they didn't use this bleach bypass. And they actually used, they only filmed on cloudy days. There's a lot of rainy day scenes too, a lot of rainy night scenes, but they only used days that were cloudy. And if the sun were to come out, they like went and played soccer and just kind of waited until the clouds came.
Sounds like a good gig.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
So the opposite of what you normally would do. Wait for the sun to come out.
Exactly. So yeah, that's how they kind of got the visuals to it. A lot of things that I noticed throughout too, and I didn't have much time, so within my days. So what I tried to do was like watch a little bit of the movie over like 2 weeks or so, but every time I started watching it, there'd be like some gross scenes that came up, like a dead body would show up, and like just the way that I know what you're thinking.
I've tried to watch this movie a few times, and every time
Seinfeld reference. Yeah, it was just very like grotesque scenes of like dead bodies, and there he was always trying to portray, from what it looked like, is, I mean, you could probably just tell me that this is just something that would probably show up in the movie anyways, but I feel like the shots were always filmed at a low angle because of the just watery landscape of the farmland and the just muddy, like, there were kind of dirt roads and stuff, and so all the characters were always squatting down. I just felt like it's geared to kind of show like the dirtiness of everything, but just there's a lot of images of like gross dead bodies, and I was trying to eat sometimes. I'm like, man, I got to turn this shit off. But those were some of the things that they did.
Should have been watching Okja.
Yeah, make me hungry.
Sounds like coffin flop. Those naked dead bodies just bursting out of shit wood and hidden pavement.
So this brings us to my third question, which if you're a regular listener or watcher of us, you'll know that it's the legal question. So why is your film legally better than the other one?
I could start, Mooch, just because it's already been hinted at. My movie is legally better because it's based on real life. It's based on one of the most famous and infamous serial killer case that happened in rural South Korea, a city named Hwasong. Between 1986, the movie was set, I think it was like 1989, and then later went to 2003. But the serial killings were from 1986 to 1991. It was a huge cold case that basically gripped the whole country, remained unsolved until a man named Lee Chun-jae. I might be saying that wrong.
Yeah, I'd have to see it written out, but probably Chun-jae.
Chun-jae? That's probably right.
Yeah.
He confessed to all 9 of those killings depicted in Memories of Murder, as well as 6 more. So I think he confessed to 6 more, but when they were trying to solve the murders, they didn't know that all those would have been connected. He confessed in 2019. As you had mentioned, he had already been in prison for killing like his sister-in-law, right?
Yeah.
The sister-in-law probably did the same thing that he did to all these other women. They couldn't solve the case. Lack of evidence, like really sloppy police work, lack of resources, the technology at the time, just like a lot of different places, the U.S. included. DNA became a huge thing as far as the investigation and breakthrough in 2019, where they matched that up with his confession. He also confessed to a killing that was thought to be a copycat. So added another victim to that series of killings, and where the copycat killer, who they thought was a copycat killer, had been arrested and convicted and was serving. He had at that point served 20 years in prison. Now, yeah. So in addition to the DNA and the confession of the actual killer, he provided specific like things that only the killer would know. You know, but for some reason, and I'm sure it's because, you know, it was 2019, but for some reason they still retried the copycat killer, the so-called copycat killer. They retried him. He was found to not be, you know, he was cleared. But that all happened 11 years after he finished the sentence that he was given. So kind of all for naught, except for, you know, clearing his name that he didn't do all these things. But yeah, I found the whole thing very interesting and very fucked up. But, you know, the movie does really kind of play into what happened in real life, as the police department that was working on this was fucking up all over the place, but they also didn't have resources, and it was also kind of a tough case to solve, and pretty interesting. That's why it's legally better.
They actually couldn't get him either, the actual serial killer, because the statute of limitations had passed.
Yeah.
So even though he did kill 14 plus people, yeah. And I think in an interview, you know, after 2019, he did say he was surprised that he was able to hide it for so long.
Oh, wow.
Too.
Yeah.
Because he thought that he would have been caught earlier.
Which is crazy because statute of limitations for murder, multiple murders. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Thanks, Mucci. I'm glad you agree.
Well, for me, mine's better because the ALF in the movie is actually a real life organization, and sort of like is hinted at in the movie. They've various times been accused of terrorism themselves and employing actions that kind of cross the boundary. So
it's kind of like Greenpeace.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah,
or PETA.
Yeah, or PETA.
Yeah.
But specifically Greenpeace, you take your life in your hands with those people, right?
Is that a Seinfeld reference?
It is.
It's the same character, too.
Same character that you mentioned earlier, yeah.
Anyway, one of the issues or times that it's been accused of terrorism is that there were explosive devices found at Oxford University in 2007, and there were claims on a website, allegedly by animal rights extremists, that the college was targeted for an arson attack, and it was made by people claiming to be part of the ALF. So Britain had formed the National Extremism Tactical Coordination Unit in 2004 to respond to illegal animal rights activity by such organizations. That organization was actually dissolved in 2011. In the U.S., also in around that same time, 2006, actually, 11 defendants were indicted for charges including destruction of an energy facility, arson, and this was allegedly on behalf of ALF and its sister movement, the Earth Liberation Front, or ELF. And the indictment refers to attacks on 17 sites from 1996 to 2001, including just like energy facilities, national parks, things like that. So Okja, in the movie, they similarly operate, at least in the fringes of legality, although the characters insist on nonviolence over and over. Paul Dano is kind of the leader of the group in the movie.
Pig does?
Yeah.
That'll do, Pig.
All right.
Now we are at closing statements, in which you each have about a minute each to attack the other side.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and attack. Basically, I haven't seen Memories of Murder, but it kind of sounds like a ripoff of the movie Seven, but not as good.
Yeah.
When you're talking about just constant rainy days, solving a multiple murder mystery, murders that make you not want to, watch it while you're eating, sounds like exactly the same movie. So, I don't know. Sounds like a bit unoriginal, derivative, some might say.
Okay. On that note, we've already quoted Babe several times, and from what I can tell, Okja kind of sounds like a ripoff of Babe, or Wilbur, or Charlotte's Web. So, take it
as
for
a
what it
pig in
is.
It's like Animal Farm, Carrie.
And I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
All right. Well, now it's time for my verdict. I haven't seen either of these films yet, and actually, I think the only Bong Joon Ho film I've actually seen is Parasite. And kind of going off the vibes of that, I am more gravitated towards watching Memories of Murder first. I probably will watch both, but I think I'll have to give it to Orlando for Memories of Murder.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I'll eventually watch Okja.
I'd be more gravitated to Memories of Murder as well.
Yeah.
When I started watching it, I was like, I don't know, because it really
Long.
does take. It's a long movie, and it does take a
17
while.
increments of 10 minutes.
But it does. It's kind of like a slow start too. But then once it starts hitting a pace, it gets really good. So.
All right. Well, I think I'm probably going to watch it in one sitting. But all right, that was OTR.
Thank you.
Thanks. This is a very cut.